I'm not all that surprised at the assassination attempt against Trump, and yes, there are powerful forces arrayed against him that want him gone. We are certainly living through an end-of-cycle period of time, and that means that unscripted events are more frequent, not less. And even if they do succeed in neutralizing him in some way, shape, or form, whether that means taking his life or not, it's not going to stop the forces that are already in motion. Welcome back to Men and the City. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm recording this video from Argentina on Sunday at about 4 o'clock local time, so that's about 3 o'clock East Coast time. And I'm timestamping it because I don't know when or even if I'll release this video, but I wanted to make an off-the-cuff sort of stream of consciousness video for all of you in light of the recent assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. And I'm sure at this stage, most of you who are in the US know more about it than I do. So today's video is going to be called "The Era of Unscripted Events Has Begun." I think we're reaching the end of cycle, as most of you know. I've talked about this in a lot of videos. The rise of the East, the fall of the West, or the decline of the West. The end of the dollar as the world reserve currency, maybe as a currency at all. The rise of new monetary forces, arrangements, alliances like BRICS, for instance. The emergence of wars. We've got the war in Ukraine, we've got the war in Gaza, we've got skirmishing in the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. All of these are communicating to me, and certainly I'm not the only one, that something big is coming. And so this assassination attempt against Trump really doesn't surprise me at all, but it is part of a series forthcoming of unscripted events. And I emphasize that in part because on the internet, in the mainstream press, certainly on both sides of the political aisle in the US, and I know this is more or less true in Europe, there are an inexhaustible number of people who will tell you that there are secret forces behind the world, you know, that the bankers are really pulling the strings, or it's the globalists, or it's this, that, the other. And certainly there is truth in those statements, because we know that there are powerful forces in the world today that pull the strings in all kinds of ways, by leveraging international institutions, by controlling financial markets, by having influence in the military-industrial complex. These things are well known. But that does not mean that they're in control. It does not mean that they script human events or that the future is predetermined. None of that's the case. And so, in part, I think what's happening with Trump, and this is a very tragic day, it is. The U.S. in particular hasn't gone through something like this, I don't think, since the assassination of Kennedy in the 1960s. Maybe the removal of Richard Nixon as president in the 1970s. You know, those were major events that I think crashed this sort of idealistic halo that a lot of Americans felt about the U.S. government, about the United States. So today, like then, we don't necessarily feel idealism. In fact, we don't. In our case, it's probably nihilism, you know, the rejection of ideals. But there are these powerful, influential ideas about control and about who's scripting this or that, or the forces that are driving us into war or crashing the economy. But more than anything, the world is out of control. And so you're going to see, going forward, a steady escalation of unscripted events. Things are going to continue to surprise us. Now, I'm not saying this assassination attempt against Trump was impossible to predict. I don't think that that's the case. But nobody really knows what's coming. We're living in a different time. We're living at the end of cycle. So any number of unforeseen events can come to the fore. If you were to go back into the 1960s and tell people where the US was heading, what it would look like, from the vantage point of 2024, they would never have believed you. That's how dramatically things changed. And a similar kind of dynamic is at play today. I'm telling you, unscripted events are going to come to the fore. Things that people don't think is even remotely possible are going to happen. So I guess the point of this video is prepare for the unexpected, the unscripted, the unforeseen. Account for scenarios that you just think are very unlikely, and don't assume that the powers that be are in control. I think the opposite is the case. I really do. And I think the public, the average person, whether it's in Argentina or the United States or in the Middle East or in Europe, is slowly but surely going to be exposed to the extent to which things are out of control. That nobody's really driving things forward, that actually it's just a mushy sea of instability and chaos. And when the public sees more evidence of that, then you're going to start to see a kind of mania result. And when manias happen, we're accustomed to them in the US in the financial markets, but there are political manias, there are social manias, there are religious manias that come to the fore when large numbers of people feel unstable, when they feel as though the powers that be have lost control. And so I think we're rapidly barreling towards a moment when the public is going to come to grips with the reality that nobody's really in control. Now, for us, for the neo-masculine movement, for young men, I have argued, I have advocated that we should interpret that as liberation, that we should view it as a moment of empowerment. Because when everybody else is sort of scared and panicked and frenzied, for us, because we see the world as fundamentally out of control, because we are opening our minds to the possibility that the world reserve currency may not be the dollar much longer. We envision a future in which the world is not globalized, it's not multicultural, it's actually retrenched around a more traditional, a more nationally constituted set of identities, not just in the West, but around the world. Opening your mind to the very real possibility that the future that we're barreling towards is going to look radically different than the past because of unscripted events, because the powers that be just don't have the power that they do, should be interpreted by you as empowerment. Because men of character, of intelligence, of open-mindedness, we're going to stand to do very well in this environment. And I've said repeatedly, a lot of people that have been struggling over the last 10 years especially, a lot of you are men of character. You've told the truth. You've stood against trendiness. You've rejected mass delusion, wokeism, feminism, political correctness, communism. A lot of these ideas that have become institutionalized in the US, and you've suffered for it. But the future's not what a lot of these black pill people are telling you. It's not a scripted set of events that's leading us inexorably towards a dystopian future. That is not happening right now. And yes, I'm not all that surprised at the assassination attempt against Trump. And yes, there are powerful forces arrayed against him that want him gone. But this is not about Trump. And even if they do succeed in neutralizing him in some way, shape, or form, whether that means taking his life or not, it's not going to stop the forces that are already in motion. It's not going to prevent a massive overhaul of the status quo and a radically different future that I keep talking about. In fact, it may even intensify or accelerate it. So open your minds. Be less susceptible to the idea that this is all controlled, it's all scripted, it's all choreographed, because it isn't. It simply is not. And that should reassure you to some degree that what you do, the life you lead, the things you say, the actions you take is consequential, because it can change the trajectory that we're on. The whole country that most of us, I think, bemoan as in a state of free fall can be fixed. can be changed for the better. But no pain, no gain, as we know, right? Bad things have to happen for good things to ultimately triumph. Just be prepared for unscripted events, for spectacular developments that 6 months ago, even 3 months ago, were viewed as impossible. Today, they are quite possible. In fact, maybe inevitable. Nothing's inevitable. Nothing is scripted or choreographed beyond a shadow of a doubt. The world is very fungible in many ways. But we are certainly living through an end of cycle period of time. And that means that unscripted events are more frequent, not less. So be hopeful, be optimistic about the future. Try to set aside the black pill doomsday forecast that a lot of people are going to advance in the wake of this assassination attempt. And just remember what I said. Going forward, more and more people are going to wake up to the fact that nobody's really in control. And to the extent that the powers that be are in control, they have screwed everything up for themselves and for the Western world that they currently lead. So, stay tuned for more, and we'll talk soon.